Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much, Kiefer, for that introduction. Thank you, NWTF and the Dunganon family. Thank you so much for having me here this afternoon. Um, let me just share my screen. Okay. So there you go. So this afternoon, I'll be talking about how to keep your children engaged and stimulated at home. So I'm very glad that you guys invited me for in celebrating International Women's Week this March, and I'm sure not all lang naman the women will benefit from my talk. I'm sure all of you guys who are caring for children at home will actually benefit as well. So let me start off with this fact. No? Children grow, develop, and learn throughout their lives from birth in infancy to adulthood. So this means that as adults in the lives of these children, it is our duty to help them in this endeavor. And the objectives of this talk this afternoon is as follows. No? Hopefully, after today, I can give you an idea on what growth and development is so we would know how to properly stimulate it. And then I am also hoping then to provide you some recommendations on how to keep your children engaged and stimulated at home because I still believe that I want to empower everybody to be able to stimulate their own children at home. And then that is with respect to their growth and development. No? And a brief information as well on what to do when you feel worried about your child's growth and developmental status, especially now, no, in a time of pandemic. So let's get on with it. No? So what is growth anyway? So growth by definition refers to an increase in physical size of the whole or any of its parts. So by that meaning, the best way to assess one's growth is through growth charts. No? So this is normally done when you go on regular checkups with your pediatrician or in the health center, right? So your child is usually measured and then plotted on these growth charts. These are WHO growth charts, and they are used to see the trajectory of their growth. And here we try to see if they are meeting the expectation for their age. Now, development, on the other hand, actually encompasses growth. It is the increase in understanding, acquisition of new skills, more sophisticated responses and behavior, and it is more of a process of unfolding, expanding, becoming fuller, more complex, and more complete. Now, if growth is measured through those charts I showed earlier, development, on the other hand, is measured against developmental milestones per age. No? So developmental milestones offer important clues about your child's developmental health. Um, so what are developmental milestones? So here are some of its domains so that you have an idea on how to kind of observe it on your children. So we have the gross motor skills or the gross motor domain, and these are activities that make use of large muscles of the body, such as the legs, the arms, and trunk, in association with movement and posture. Development on this part of the domain is usually proceeded in a cephalocaudal fashion. So when you say cephalocaudal, from head to tail, no? So from head to feet. So you can see here in these pictures, the baby starts off developing the neck tone, no? Him being able to hold his head, and then eventually rolling over, and then eventually going through the trunk of the baby. So he's able to kind of sit on his own and then pull up himself to stand independently, and then eventually walking by himself, and then jumping around and then running already, so it's more of the bigger muscles of the body when you see it. Now, fine motor skills involves the smaller muscles of the body, such as those in the fingers, and the development here usually proceeds in a proximodistal fashion. So, meaning to say, from the inner part of the body, so from the trunk, and then outwards, no, going to the arms and then towards the fingers. All right. So, cognitive development, on the other hand, is the development of conscious thought in the young child, governing their ability to think, learn, reason, and abstract. So, this domain is about how children learn new things, solve problems, and it includes how children explore their environment to figure things out, and also includes academic skills like counting, learning letters, etc. But this also involves, play, just like this kid reaching for a toy with one hand, and then this other kid in this picture wherein she's exploring things in different ways, such as shaking, banging, and then throwing, and then building towers, of at least a few blocks. Now, usually cognitive domain is not just learned through academics, but also through play. So we'll just talk about more about that later. All right. Now, language domain is a little bit self-explanatory, So language may be either receptive or expressive. So the interaction between these two leads to a better understanding of the world around us and how to communicate our needs to others. Personal social domain consists of skills that are self-help in nature as well as socialization skills. So they influence one's ability to interact with others around them. So such as smiling, especially at people, cooperating with other children, showing affections for friends without prompting, and then also part of here is the adaptive skills, which would be, self-help skills, even doing chores. No? That's part of it as well. Now, growth and development are highly influenced by the interplay of nature and nurture. Nature being our genetic makeup or what we innately have, and then nurture, which makes up the environmental influences, such as the upbringing, good nutrition, experiences, education, etc. So, typical and atypical developmental trajectories emerge from the combined effects of genes and environmental factors, meaning to say both are important, and changes on individual variability and may be rooted in the interaction of both nature and nurture. So, it's very important to stimulate the environment of the child. No? So the brain has the potential to be molded by these environmental factors in either a beneficial, functionally positive direction or in a deleterious, functionally negative direction. So healthy mental, emotional, and behavioral development in young children reflects and requires secure attachment, stable foundational relationship with adult caregivers. This includes also the emotional responsiveness. So, meaning to say, how you would react towards your child. Oh? And of course, positive parenting behaviors that will result in the kinds of positive language rich interactions that stimulate language and cognitive development. Now, with the coronavirus pandemic, it actually stresses the families, and it's very important to actually strengthen and support the relationship and behaviors of the family inside the home nowadays, because we are all undergoing stressful situations. Now, this is actually the usual setup, that parents are facing now. Since most of us are stuck indoors and children aren't allowed to go outside, to go in the malls, they seem to get bored, of course. And of course, parents have no idea on how to encourage or to stimulate their growth and development. So that's what I am um, going to try to you know, give light to you this afternoon. So here are a few things that you as parents, caregivers, or adults that interact with children can do to make sure that their growth and development are stimulated appropriately at home right now. Now, so number one would be to promote setting and structure in the home. According to studies, no, children raised in a nurturing, predictable, and safe environment is likely to be more resilient when faced with stressful experiences later in life. So, considering that we are all undergoing some form of stressful situation because of this pandemic, it'll be really beneficial, no, for children to have this sort of predictability in their lives by providing some form of structure in the home. So, how do we set structure? No, is this familiar to any of you? So, this is an example, no, of a daily schedule in a daycare or in a school, right? Teachers usually use this to set a form of predictability on how a child's day would go. Now, children thrive on predictability, and it's good for their caregivers as well. It's much easier to deal with a long day with little ones if it's divided into smaller, more manageable pieces. So try to keep a daily schedule of routines and then make it as stable as possible. So ideally, it's best to give one activity at a time also to promote their focus and attention on a certain task. So these are three key ingredients to building structure in the home. Number one would be consistency. Consistency means that you respond to your child's behavior the same way every time, no matter what is going on or how you are feeling that day. So, misbehaviors are less likely to occur again if you always use the same consequence, like, for example, ignoring or time out. Good behaviors, on the other hand, are likely to be repeated if you let your child know that you like them. So, this doesn't mean that you need to give consistent attention to all of your child's behaviors. So, think about something you want your child to do more often. This could be, let's say, sharing or cleaning up or following directions. And then to increase those behaviors, praise them each time you see them occur. Your consistent response will help those behaviors happen more often. Predictability naman for number two means that your child knows what will happen and how you will respond. So when your daily routines are predictable, your child knows what to expect for the day. When your rules are predictable, your child knows how you will react to her behavior. And then thirdly would be following through. So this means that you do what you say and then you will do it in response to your child's behavior. This is often called the say what you mean and mean what you say. No? So if you tell your child a behavior will be punished, you will punish it every time it happens. If you tell your child he will be rewarded for a behavior, then you will give him the reward after he has done what you have asked. So to be consistent, and predictable, we need to follow through. So follow through is important for all behaviors. This includes behaviors we like and what we don't like. So going back to the visual schedules or the schedules that you can do at home. So here are examples of a picture schedule, especially for young children who cannot read yet. You can use pictures. And then eventually, once your child is able to identify, let's say, numbers, then maybe you could add some time on their schedule. And then for those who can read, then you could use some simple words so that they could be reminded of the schedule for the day. All right. So number two, promote physical activity. Recent research from UCLA demonstrated that exercise increased growth factors in the brain, making it easier for the brain to grow new neuronal connections. So exercise is indeed beneficial. And according to the latest WHO recommendations, so here they are, there are physical activities that are recommended per age group. So for infants of less than 1 year old, they should be physically active several times a day in a variety of different ways, no? So particularly through interactive floor-based play, it's more better. And then for those who are unable to walk yet, you could include at least 30 minutes of prone position or tummy time, no? So papadapain in other words, no? So it should be spread throughout the day, and you have to make sure if you put your baby on prone position or kung papadapain nyo ang baby, kailangan gising siya. So only when the baby is awake. Okay? For children 1 to 2 years of age, they should spend at least 180 minutes, no, of a variety of physical activities of any intensity, including moderate to vigorous intensity, physical activity spread throughout the day, but more is better. So how would we be able to kind of stimulate that indoors? No, so you could use, let's say, here in the picture, a hula hoop or maybe a jump rope. No, for children 1 to 2 years. Maybe they don't know how to use the jump rope yet, but maybe you could make them hop over a paper, no, a bond paper, and make it into a game. All right. So for 3 to 4 years of age, they should still spend at least 180 minutes of a variety of physical activities spread throughout the day as well, and at least 60 minutes of moderate to vigorous intensity. More is better. So these are examples of doing it indoors. No? So you could create an obstacle course using papers, and then you could tape it just like a dome, just like in this picture on the right, and then make the child roll their ball underneath, make it into a contest. And then if you have puzzles at home, you could try to stimulate your child by doing the wheelbarrow motion, just like in this picture, so that it provides some form of vigorous intensity physical activity. No? Now, for children 5 to 17 years of age or children and adolescents, they need at least 60 minutes a day of moderate to vigorous intensity, mostly aerobic physical activity across the week. So for older kids, maybe you could do some videos, watch videos of yoga or Zumba, and make them follow some dance steps online. And then you could also incorporate at least 3 days a week of vigorous intensity of aerobic activities. All right. Now, for number 3, we should also promote play. So play is also important, no? Play is actually a natural activity for children. It provides opportunities for children to learn and grow physically, mentally, and socially. So play is not just playing with toys, but it actually teaches children and stimulates their cognitive development as well. So it's not just simply being creative, but it also could stimulate as well their language, especially if somebody else is playing with them. Now, a child doesn't need another child to learn how to play. He just needs also another human being, no? So whatever your age is, it will still be best to kind of play with the children in the home. Um, Children of differing ages have differing styles of play. Play with different things and spend different amounts of time in various types of play. And physical play, for example, actually begins in infancy. No? Infancy pa lang. With those apparently rhythmic movements that you could see with babies, that's already considered as play. And then as their gross motor skills improve, preschoolers exercise their muscles more by running, jumping, hopping, and then throwing. Okay. And then towards the end of the middle childhood, they learn more on rough and tumble play, including kicking, chasing, yeah, and so especially with boys. Now, active play, for active play, you can do this by doing some indoor activities such as creating an obstacle course with the use of crepe paper, no? So you could imagine, help your child imagine go through, let's say, laser. So she'll try her best to go through the maze without hitting the crepe paper. You could also have some tape or a colored tape and then try to tape it on the floor. And then parang you can do the pico indoors, no? Or hopscotch, in other words. Um, so even if the child is indoors, you could still try to stimulate active play so that you could still build strong muscles and confidence to meet physical challenges. Manipulative play, on the other hand, builds eye-hand coordination and the fine motor skills of your child. So it encourages ideas on how things work and also fosters problem solving skills. So for younger children, you could use, blocks, stack them, and then you could use stacking rings. And then eventually, when the child is a little bit older, you could try to stimulate the fine motor skills by doing lacing, such as in this picture, or even coin banking. So you could have him collect some coins and then have him shoot it in the piggy bank because it actually helps stimulate these fingers, the index and the thumb. No, so the eye-hand coordination and trying to shoot it on the piggy bank. You could also use simple things in the household such as yung mga sipit or yung kimpit, no? The clothespin, you could paint them and then try to look at this in this picture. You could try to kind of stick it with the correct color. So you're already stimulating the child in their fine motor, but also trying to teach color coordinations and trying to teach the child on how to be familiar with the same colors. Another is like a simple toothpick, no? So you could stick lots of toothpick, just like in this picture, on a clay so that it creates a little bit of challenge on the child. And then have him shoot it in this container for the toothpick. Now, make believe play gives the children a chance to try new behaviors and also encourage imagination. So, for this, you can try to make use of the things at home, such as the cardboard boxes, try to imagine that they're in a boat. Um, and also this fishing alphabet activity, no? You could put some letters on the fishes and then have him fish for it by putting a magnet at the end of the string, just like in this picture, and then place some paper clips on the fish. No, so it's fairly easy. Some materials are actually in your house already. You need not buy extravagant toys. No, so you could help make believe by having him sit, let's say, in a laundry basket and then pretend that he is fishing or he's in a boat. Creative play. Um, so here are some examples of toys that stimulate creative play, musical instruments, and then maybe creating a costume for your child and having them wear it. And then, of course, under creative play would be the arts and crafts, no? Fine motor skills, such as this one, no? Placing some magnets in the string and then, fishing for it in a box, for example. So these are things that you could also try to use as creative play. And of course, we have learning play. Learning play such as board games. So it's also good to try to play with your children, board games to help them promote strategies and then also sportsmanship. Um, Now, normally, no, children get bored with their toys at home. So maybe you could try toy rotation. So if you have a variety of toys, try this and then pick a few toys to leave out for your child to play with while you put the rest out of sight. After a week or so, you try to switch it so that it seems like it's something new again. No, so that you don't need to have to buy every time, because boredom for infants and toddlers may not look the same, just like in older kids, no? So here are some signs that your child is already seemingly bored on the activity. So if the child is fussing or whining or struggling to focus or engage in play or becoming more aggressive, such as trying to throw the toys already, then maybe it's time to switch up and then pack away that certain toy that your child is playing with and then try to take out another one. All right. So, um, let's go to the next tip, which is encouraging reading. So, let's just do a quick poll to see if you guys are still listening. And I just want to ask you guys, when can you start reading to your child? Is it during grade school, preschool, or as soon as after birth? So can you just type the letter on the chat box here in Zoom, and also for those in workplace? Can you try to um, place your answer in the chat? Just type the letter, right? So try to remember when you started, when you were young, or if you still remember that. Or your own experience. So, all right, let's see. Kiefer, what are the answers that they are typing in the workplace? Oh, okay. So most answers in workplace mostly point to B and C. All right. So it's a little bit of both, huh? All right. So let's see. Actually, the most recent American Academy of Pediatrics policy, or the AAP, on pediatric literacy promotion recommends that parents begin reading together with their infants as soon after birth. No? So, um, even if they're still a baby, there's actually some benefits to reading to your child already. So, um, let's see, no? What are the benefits of reading to your child? So there's such a study called the Reach Out and Read. So this is a well-established evidence-based intervention that they started in the US. And they show, so they kind of enrolled some families and children and then taught them how to read to their children, and then after which they try to measure the developmental skills of these children that were enrolled in this type of intervention. So according to those studies that they did after giving out that intervention, they have seen that there were improved outcomes for the children in the realm of vocabulary growth and school readiness. So, according to the studies, they have shown numerous benefits for children who were exposed to this program, as they have shown higher language scores, no, both the expressive and receptive. And they also saw that if children are read to more frequently, the children will consider reading as something that is enjoyable. And another thing is they are more ready for school entry because they provide the enriched vocabulary and syntax exposure. Syntax meaning the grammar and sentence construct, no? And then also alphabetic and phonemic awareness, which is quite important in learning how to read themselves. It also nurtures parent-child relationship that can serve as positive childhood experience that buffers against adverse childhood experiences, such as you know, the stresses in this pandemic, and it is actually a source of resiliency. So, how do you try to read to your child? You try to do the following, no? So, you try to run your finger under the words as you read, and then use funny voices and maybe animal noises to keep it interactive. And then stop to look at the pictures, and then maybe you could ask your child to name a few things and talk about how the pictures relate to their lives. So I'll give you a brief discussion per age group on what type of books to read to your children. So for infants less than a year old, maybe birth to 6 months, you could go ahead and start reading to your child mga chunky board books, or just like in these pictures, no, or soft fabric books. So though your baby may seem too little to understand, she will just enjoy your company and the soothing sound of your voice and your words. At this age, babies may come to recognize the book sharing routine as something that's calming. And babies will also try to explore the books through their senses. So just let your child do it. So you might notice that your child is just eating the book or just, grabbing it. So it's still okay. So you just let it. So that's just their way to explore and learn through their senses. um, by 9 to 18 months, no, they may prefer or seem to recognize certain stories or pictures. So your baby may also continue to occasionally mouth books in the early years. That is normal book behavior. So you could start already with some rhyming phrases that will catch your toddler's attention. So starting at about 12 months or 1 year old, you can start to ask simple questions such as, for example, in this book, Goodnight Moon, where is the moon? So you could try to see if your baby points or gestures. So you can see from here already if your child is able to do these milestones. Now, from 18 to 24 months, you may introduce longer stories now. Don't worry if your child runs away when you read. Kids this age just really need to move, no? So if you keep on reading, he'll just keep listening and he may come back to reconnect and hear more. So look for ways to connect that energy in the story. For example, you could ask your child to hop, just like the rabbit in the book. Your toddler may want to label objects with simple sounds or words. For example, exclaiming "moo" when he sees a picture of a cow on the book. No, now, for children 2 to 3 years of age, you can now use the books with regular pages and those that have engaging plots. No, so things that they will eventually experience. For example, like this book, "Let's Go to School," because your child will start or begin schooling, for example. Now, for new talkers, get in the habit of pausing before you say a favorite line or phrase in the story to see if your toddler will fill in the final word. So this will harness also your child's language as well as your child's growing independence by giving your child the job of, for example, turning the pages while reading. And then you could also ask questions such as who's hiding behind the tree. So this interaction really builds up your child's cognitive or thinking skills and language skills. For 3 to 5 years of age, your children might be interested in relatable plots. So you could see here some examples of such books. No? I came across this funny book called Ako Ay May Titi. So this is something that might be relatable for your children, no? For little boys. So maybe you could also start to ask questions such as, how do you think the boy is feeling in the story? What do you think will happen next? So these are the times that you could try to engage with your child as well. Okay. Now, don't worry. Some children would really want to repeat the same book over and over, because toddlers still likes repetition at this time. All right. So number 5 would be promote adaptive skills. So, what are adaptive skills in the first place? Adaptive skills, so these are just life skills in the road to independence. All of us must learn a set of skills that is beneficial for our environment and then later on for the communities. So, as seen here, adaptive skills are actually stepping stones toward accessing and benefiting from local or remote communities. Usually, we teach adaptive skills. We start with personal care independence, such as feeding independently. So examples would be like this, toileting, and then trying to sleep on their own, bathe on their own, grooming. And then once a child is actually independent enough with themselves, then we start with the surrounding environment. So that is in the house. So that would be domestic tasks. So some chores doing at home, such as packing away their toys, trying to water the plants, folding their little towelettes, helping in the kitchen for older kids, and setting the table. And then later on, you can teach na your child with community tasks. How, for example, one navigates in the outside world. So learning symbols, pedestrian rules, monetary values, etc. All right. So try to encourage this and promote this by giving opportunities, no? Do not be afraid of mess. Do not be afraid that oh no, the child might just spill their water, etc. You have to remember that acceptable mess learning is part of or let's say having some little messes in the initial part of the development is actually very typical. We're hindi naman tayo yung parang pinanganak na magaling agad, 'di ba? So we need to train for it. Okay. So number 6 would be to limit gadget use. Now, this one I know it is easier said than done. No? So let's take a vote as adults or parents. What do you think about starting gadgets on children or on your child? When can you start introducing gadgets? Can I just see poll? So try to write your answer on the chat. Okay. So this is actually a little bit controversial in a way because I'm sure lots of parents have different standpoints on this one. So let's see in the chat. Hold on. Oh, sorry. Okay. Kiefer, are you
Hey,
there?
Doc. Yes, Doc. Yes, I'm
Hi.
seeing a lot of answers
Um,
here in our workplace.
okay. Mm-hmm.
We have a lot of viewers, our
So,
listeners. We have almost 200. So we are
oh
seeing
wow, okay.
a lot of answers. Letter D, almost most of
Mostly
the
D,
answer.
huh?
Yeah.
Okay. So, all right. Okay, but let's see. Let's see what majority of parents on studies show. So, okay. Actually, in studies, majority of parents, actually 61%, identified ages 2 to 2.5 years as being acceptable ages for their children to use technology, with some of those parents actually endorsing younger than 2. No? But what do the experts recommend? So these are the recommendations of the American Academy of Pediatrics, or the AAP. Ideally, you should avoid or zero screen time under 18 months, except live video chats. So, for example, doing Zoom with relatives, it's all right for under 18 months. And then, ideally, from 18 to 24 months, you have to co-view high quality programming. And then from 2 years to 5 years old, you should limit screen use to an hour and still use co viewing. When you say 1 hour, it has to be spread throughout the day. Okay? So, hindi yung parang, oh, 1 hour, one sitting lang. So, you have to spread it throughout the day. And then, avoid fast-paced and violent programming. And of course, turn off TV when not in use, meaning we are not encouraging background TV, such as if the child is just playing and then the TV is turned on in the background, no? So that's the typical, diba, scenario that we see sometimes at home. So according to AAP, that is not recommended. But usually, I get this question a lot. Doc, educational naman kasi yung pinapanood niya eh, di ba? So, children under the age of 3, that's true, no? They are capable of learning from interactive touchscreen tablets and then TV and videos. But you have to remember, they still experience a transfer deficit. So, what is transfer deficit? Ano ba yun, Doc? No? Transfer deficit meaning younger kids have the inability to use the information that they are absorbing on the TV or on the screens and using it into their everyday experiences. Meaning, to say they still have difficulty in applying what they are learning on the screen if they do it especially alone, no? So for example, sometimes you would see children, they would just imitate what they are seeing on the gadget. They would learn some letters, etc. But sometimes it's just more of rote memory. They just remember it, but they do not know how to apply it on their everyday lives. So ideally, for this connection to happen, a parent or somebody or an adult should be there to co-view with their kids so that they would know how to use this knowledge and then learn to apply it in their everyday lives. It's what we call the transfer of knowledge. Okay, so um ideally, for gadget use, you have to limit it, okay, to ensure lots of time for more interactive types of play or more interaction with real people, the 3D world, no, rather than the 2D. And of course, be cautious about the amount of learning to expect from a young child that a young child can derive from screen exposure alone. Early childhood may be for particularly vulnerable time, no? As young children actually expect and need a great deal of social interaction. So from adults, from people around them, no, instead of the gadgets, because they learn language, they learn more if they are interacting with real people rather than the screen or the tablet alone. So, right. Okay. So, all right. So, lastly, I want you to follow anticipatory guidelines in feeding and sleeping. Feeding, okay. So for feeding, ideally, it's still useful to have regularly scheduled time meals. As I've said no earlier, you really have to set a schedule and some form of predictability, and you have to include feeding or the meal times here as well. Provide low calorie snacks, have a neutral, distraction free environment so that the focus is just on the feeding per se. So try to limit feeding your child in front of the TV or having a gadget in front of them so that they would just, focus on what they are eating, and then also promote feeding independently. So allow the child to actually hold the food, touch the food, explore it, and then also allow and tolerate mess. And then provide the same food for all family members. And then give small portions that is easy to bite or grasp, especially for younger kids, so that you would also stimulate the um, fine motor development. And of course, as I've said, encourage self-feeding. So this is the Pinggang Pinoy. We will give you a copy of this on the chat. And yeah, so there's a link that they will share with you so that you at least know some nutritious foods that you may try to apply at home for kids and also for teens. So this is a food guide that is recommended by food group in every meal. Okay, right. Now for sleeping, okay, so these are the recommendations of AAP, or American Academy of Pediatrics, and WHO, for each age group. Okay, so it is actually important as well to emphasize having a good night's sleep, and children need a regular time to go to sleep, and lights can go out at different times for different children in the family depending on how much sleep each child needs, and nighttime rituals can help ease a child to sleep. So these rituals can be storytelling, reading aloud, conversation, and songs, but try to avoid exciting play and activities before bedtime. Now, so for infants less than a year old, for 0 to 3 months, they sleep for about 14 to 17 hours, and then by 4 to 11 months, they decrease to 12 to 16. By a year old, 1 to 2, they decrease to 11 to 14 hours. So this includes naps already. For 3 to 4 years old, no, they need at least 10 to 13 hours. For grade schoolers, or 6 to 12 years old, they need about 9 to 12 hours of sleep. And of course, for teens, it decreases to 8 to 10 hours of sleep. Now, these are some ABCs of sleeping. So, age appropriate bedtimes and wake times with consistency. So you have to remember to include it in your schedule as well, to have a certain form of routine as well. Have a consistency with the location on where your child sleeps. Have some ample exercise and good diet during the day. No electronics in the bedroom before bedtime. Have some form of positivity before sleeping. Promote independence when falling asleep. And then, of course, meet the needs of the child within the day, so that the child would feel tired and then eventually sleep at night. So if you fill up a child's day, then it is equal to a great sleep. Now, um, I know most parents nowadays are spending more time at home due to the changes in this pandemic. And the positive side in it is that you get to see more of the children. And lately, I have been getting referrals because most parents feel that they are concerned about the way their child is growing and developing. So, what would you do if you feel that as well, no? Now, usually, if there are parental concerns, it is actually best to really seek consult. Um, Most of the time, I really do not dismiss the concerns of parents, because most of the time, they really are indeed true, no? So it is really best to seek consult if you are already feeling having any doubts on your child's development. And then second, if simple measures have failed, meaning to say, let's say you have tried to administer the techniques that I have recommended earlier, and yet you still feel that your child seem to be not learning or developing, then maybe it's time to seek consult. Then, of course, if your child is at risk, if he is at risk for physical harm, if the behavior affects the child's function or their ability to achieve developmental tasks, if there are accompanying features of developmental or severe behavioral problems, and if there are child protection issues. So, and of course, if there are parental mental issues, health issues, then maybe it's time to seek consult as well. And if there are complex family situations, and if the child care or the school are not coping with your child's behavior or are already very concerned, then maybe it's time to seek consult. So, another thing is, if there is what we call developmental regression. So when a child, usually developmental development progresses in a progressive approach, so it's upwards. It's very rare that a child loses a skill that he once had. So if there are already signs that your child has that, then it's time to seek consult. And of course, prematurity. Now, what are the steps to getting help? What should you do first? Okay, so developmental monitoring is used to validate and pinpoint potential developmental concerns. So this can be done with your general pediatrician. So maybe have a conversation with the child's pediatrician and then ask the pediatrician to do a developmental screening at first. So this may be done by the GP or the general pediatricians if they can. And or maybe you need to do a referral to a specialist already, such as a developmental and behavioral pediatrician, a pediatric neurologist, or a child psychiatrist. So they are the ones who do more in-depth medical evaluation that may lead to a specific diagnosis of a developmental disability or other condition. And then referral for early intervention. So if the results of the monitoring or screening indicate developmental concerns, then maybe we will encourage the family to be referred for early intervention for provider for such services. So to summarize, so these are my tips again: promote setting, structure in the home. So have a schedule of activities for your child to do. Give one activity at a time to promote focus and attention on your child. And then you could use this by using visual schedules. And then number two, promote physical activity by doing it indoors. No, so you can be creative as possible. And then number three, promote play, different forms of play. As I've shown earlier, you can combine it with active play and then the sit down types of play. And then, of course, encourage reading, promote adaptive skills or some chores as well. And then also personal care for independent skills. Of course, limit gadget use and then follow the anticipatory guidelines for feeding and sleeping. And then seek help when needed. So thank you so very much for listening. And if you have any questions, please feel free to get in touch with me in these details or information.